The South China Sea's turquoise waters, stretching as far as the eye can see, have long been a symbol of natural beauty and abundance. But beneath the surface, these waters conceal a simmering conflict that has drawn the attention of the world. Once a tranquil expanse, the South China Sea is now a stage for high-stakes geopolitical drama, where the fate of nations and the rules of international order are being tested. In recent years, these waters have become a flashpoint of international tension, with rival navies and coast guards locked in a dangerous game of brinkmanship. The world's eyes are fixed on this region, where every maneuver and every standoff could have far-reaching consequences. On September 2, 2025, a Filipino resupply mission at Ayungin Shoal faced a perilous confrontation that would make headlines across the globe. The mission, intended to deliver essential supplies to the isolated Filipino Marines stationed on the BRP Sierra Madre, quickly escalated into a tense and dangerous standoff. 24 Chinese vessels, a formidable mix of Coast Guard and maritime militia, formed a tight blockade around the shoal. Their presence was overwhelming, a show of force designed to intimidate and deter any attempt to break through. The situation quickly turned volatile. A Chinese Coast Guard vessel deliberately collided with a much smaller Philippine ship, a stark and dangerous manifestation of the ongoing geopolitical friction. The impact was not just physical, it sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles worldwide. The Chinese ships escalated their tactics, unleashing powerful water cannons against the Philippine vessels. The relentless barrage forced the resupply mission to retreat, their efforts thwarted by overwhelming force and aggressive maneuvers. For the Filipino crew, it was a harrowing ordeal, a reminder of the risks they face every time they set out to sea. The message from Beijing was unmistakable. China controls these waters regardless of international law or diplomatic protests. Their actions defy the 2016 Hague ruling, which invalidated China's sweeping claims, yet the reality on the water tells a different story. The sheer number of Chinese ships, 24 in total, marks an unprecedented escalation in the ongoing dispute. Never before has such a large and coordinated force been deployed to assert control over Ayungin Shoal, raising the stakes for everyone involved. For the Filipino Marines stationed on the BRP Sierra Madre, these events are not just headlines, they are a daily threat to their survival. Cut off from regular supplies and surrounded by hostile forces, their resolve is tested with every passing day. The tension is palpable as they wonder how long they can hold out. Around the world, people watched as the situation escalated, questioning how much more pressure the Philippines can withstand. The standoff has become a symbol of resistance, but also a stark warning of how quickly regional disputes can spiral out of control. These collisions and confrontations are not isolated incidents. They are part of a deliberate state policy, a calculated effort to change the facts on the water, one maneuver at a time. As the world watches, the question remains: how far will this escalation go, and who will blink first? The gathering of Chinese vessels in the South China Sea is not a random occurrence, but rather a meticulously planned maneuver that demonstrates the full force of China's so-called cabbage strategy. This approach is named for its method of enveloping a target, much like the layers of a cabbage, with multiple rings of ships and maritime assets. What we see here is a calculated execution of this strategy, with Chinese ships moving in precise formations to assert their presence and control over contested waters. Each vessel has a specific role, and their coordinated movements are designed to send a clear message. China is prepared to defend its claims, no matter the cost. The essence of the cabbage strategy is to surround disputed areas with concentric layers of ships, fishing boats, maritime militia, and Coast Guard vessels, effectively suffocating any opposition. This multi-layered blockade makes it nearly impossible for rival claimants to access or reinforce their positions without risking confrontation. At the core of this formation is the China Coast Guard, which takes on the most direct and confrontational role. These ships physically block the passage of smaller boats, intercepting and turning them away from the contested zone. Their presence is both intimidating and persistent, making it clear that China is in control. Surrounding the Coast Guard are layers of maritime militia and fishing vessels. These civilian boats, often operating under government direction, form an impassable barrier that further complicates any attempt to break through. Their sheer numbers and coordinated actions create a wall at sea, making it extremely difficult for other nations to assert their own claims. This approach is a classic example of gray zone warfare, actions that fall below the threshold of open conflict, but are aggressive enough to exhaust and frustrate adversaries. By maintaining constant pressure without firing a shot, China wears down the resolve of its rivals, forcing them to either escalate or withdraw. The primary target of this strategy is often the Philippines, whose outposts, like the BRP Sierra Madre, are isolated and vulnerable. Over time, the relentless presence of Chinese ships takes a psychological toll on Filipino sailors, testing their endurance and will to maintain a foothold in these contested waters. The recent deployment of larger, more heavily armed Coast Guard cutters has further shifted the balance. These imposing vessels dwarf the smaller boats used by the Philippines, making any attempt to resupply or reinforce their positions even more perilous. Ultimately, the goal of the cabbage strategy is to establish de facto control over key features like Ayungin Shoal. By maintaining a constant and overwhelming presence, China seeks to normalize its occupation and make its claims a reality on the ground, or rather, at sea. By preventing vital repairs or resupply missions to the BRP Sierra Madre, China hopes that the ship will eventually become uninhabitable, forcing the Philippines to abandon it without a direct confrontation. In the end, the cabbage strategy is a patient, methodical campaign designed to gradually alter the geopolitical map of the region. Through persistent pressure and incremental gains, China aims to reshape the status quo in its favor, one layer at a time. The rise of China's maritime militia marks a significant shift in the balance of power at sea. Unlike ordinary fishing vessels, these boats are part of a state-directed force, operating under government orders and often equipped with advanced communications and surveillance equipment. Their crews are trained to follow military-style protocols, making them far more than simple fishermen. These vessels move in tight, coordinated formations, often working in tandem with the China Coast Guard and sometimes even the Chinese Navy. Their maneuvers are precise, reflecting a level of discipline and organization that is rarely seen among civilian fleets. This coordination allows them to project power far beyond what their civilian appearance would suggest. By amassing in large numbers, the maritime militia effectively crowds out legitimate fishing boats from neighboring countries. They seize control of rich fishing grounds, depriving local communities of their traditional livelihoods and asserting Chinese dominance over contested waters. Filipino fishermen who have relied on these waters for generations now face empty nets and shrinking incomes. Many are forced to abandon their ancestral fishing grounds after being harassed or chased away by the intimidating presence of the militia. The maritime militia serves as the eyes and ears of the Chinese military, constantly monitoring activity in disputed waters. They relay information back to military command, track foreign vessels, and report on any perceived threats or incursions. Their actions often provoke tense confrontations at sea, creating a strategic dilemma for other nations. These standoffs can escalate quickly, putting both civilian and military crews at risk. Responding forcefully to these provocations risks sparking diplomatic incidents or even military conflict, while doing nothing allows China to gradually expand its control and influence. The ambiguous nature of the militia, blending civilian and military roles, makes it a particularly effective tool for asserting control. Their presence muddies the waters, making it difficult for other countries to respond without escalating tensions. By blurring the lines between civilian and military activity, the maritime militia complicates international law enforcement and challenges the rules-based order at sea. In the struggle for control over the South China Sea, China's maritime militia has become a dangerous and highly effective instrument, one that extends Beijing's reach and influence while keeping its true intentions shrouded in ambiguity. At the heart of tensions is a fundamental legal dispute. Ayungin Shoal lies within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The 2016 Hague ruling rejected China's expansive claims in the South China Sea. China dismisses the ruling, insisting on historic rights. This dismissal creates a conflict where law and force oppose each other. Philippine vessels operate under sovereign rights, affirmed by international law. Chinese ships act on a national policy prioritizing historical narrative. This impasse pits international law against nationalistic conviction. Every confrontation is a new chapter in this struggle between law and might. Encounters at Ayungin Shoal are a tinderbox waiting for a spark. Each maneuver increases the risk of miscalculation and escalation. A minor incident could spiral into a military engagement. The U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty adds complexity. An armed attack could obligate U.S. defense, raising stakes. China's tactics test treaty limits, avoiding explicit armed attacks. This game of chicken pressures the US-Philippines alliance. Other nations like Australia and Japan have vested interests. Increased military traffic adds to the potential for miscalculation. A conflict at the shoal could have global repercussions. Beyond geopolitics, tensions at Ayungin Shoal have a human cost. Filipino fishermen face harassment, losing access to rich fishing grounds. The fishing industry, vital to the economy, suffers from China's blockade. Depleted fish stocks threaten the marine ecosystem's viability. The Philippines loses access to critical food and economic resources. Energy security is also at risk with untapped oil and gas reserves. China's intimidation freezes development, holding energy future hostage. Environmental damage from China's activities has irreversible consequences. The conflict's human cost is measured in lost livelihoods and environmental degradation. The Philippines responds with assertive transparency. Documenting China's actions, they release dramatic footage globally. This transparency exposes the gap between China's rhetoric and behavior. The footage generates international sympathy and condemnation of China. The Philippines turns information into a counter to China's dominance. Strengthening alliances, the Philippines revitalizes ties with the U.S. joint military exercises, enhance readiness for potential conflict. Manila diversifies security partnerships with Australia, Japan, and others. A broad coalition creates a collective deterrent against China's actions. The multilateral approach shows the Philippines is not alone. China's response to international outcry is rooted in historic rights. Beijing claims the Nansha Islands as ancient Chinese territory. The 2016 arbitral ruling is dismissed as illegitimate by China. This narrative supports domestic nationalism and deflects criticism. China accuses the Philippines of being a provocateur. State media portrays Manila's transparency as a smear campaign. This narrative aims to fracture regional unity and discourage challenges. China's actions contradict its claims of dialogue and peace. The historic rights narrative justifies a policy of force. Ayungin Shoal is more than a territorial dispute, it's a test of international order. The 2016 ruling provided a rules-based path to resolution. China's rejection of this ruling challenges global rules and laws. The South China Sea is a critical commercial waterway. Freedom of navigation is vital for the global economy. China's control threatens to disrupt this freedom. The situation tests global solidarity and international response. Strong support for the Philippines is essential to counter China's tactics. The future of peace in the Indo-Pacific hinges on the outcome. The struggle over Ayungin Shoal defines the rules of the 21st century.